You have the pressure because you want to perform well for three other people. But in a way, it's also a different type of pressure because you know you have like Penny Alexiak, and you have obviously Kylie Moss, who's been multiple world champion, and Sid, who had been on our relays for years before that. So things like that where you know you can rely on the people that you have going before and after you, so it makes it a bit easier to bear that pressure. But it's just so fun being with them, and it brings a new light to the ready room, and you just have fun and you don't worry too much about the outcome.
Welcome to Momentum, a podcast brought to you by Team Canada. In this season, Watch This, we'll hear about the inspiring stories of some of the brave women of Team Canada as we look towards the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. I'm your host, Arianne Jones, and I competed for Team Canada in the sport of luge at the Sochi 2014 Winter Olympics. Having competed on the world stage, I know all about the highs and the lows that come with being an elite athlete, especially heading into an Olympics. I'm so excited to bring you stories from across the spectrum of sport and celebrate the incredible women of Team Canada together. This episode, I am thrilled to be joined by swimming superstar Maggie Mac Neil. Maggie was a triple medalist at the Tokyo Games, bringing home a gold, silver, and bronze, and was also named the best female athlete of Tokyo 2020 by the Association of National Olympic Committees. In 2022, she made the brave decision to take a step back from swimming in individual events to focus on her training and mental health. Maggie has returned to individual competition and recently won 5 gold medals at the 2023 Pan Am Games in Santiago. In our conversation today, we discussed Maggie's journey so far, how she's feeling heading into Paris, and how she didn't choose butterfly. Butterfly chose her. Hey, Maggie, thank you so much for sitting down with me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm excited to talk about all things swimming. I have so many questions. To kick it off, I want to talk about the butterfly stroke because I feel like after every games, every kid that has watched the Olympic and also like maybe a lot of adults go into the pool and they try the butterfly. I absolutely have, and it is ridiculously hard. And for perspective, you're the Olympic 100-meter butterfly champion. Like, how do you choose that the butterfly stroke is going to be your thing, or does someone choose for you?
Yeah, it definitely is the hardest. And I mean, 100 fly is relatively short, so it's manageable. But yesterday I had a really hard practice. I did a lot of it fly. So I'm reminded on how hard it is sometimes. It's nice to get humbled occasionally. I guess to people outside the sport, I kind of describe it. I mean, I grew up a big Harry Potter fan. It's kind of like the wand situation in Harry Potter where like it chooses you. So I didn't necessarily go out and say, oh, I want to become a butterflyer or I want to swim the 100 or the 200 butterfly. I think it was just what I gravitated to because it came the most naturally to me.
Oh my gosh, I'm loving this. Your little butterfly swim wizard. I'm obsessed with that analogy, which kind of gets me thinking that even though the butterfly is obviously one of your strongest, is it your favorite stroke or which stroke is your favorite?
It's a love-hate relationship I think I've had with it over the years just because of how it's been feeling. Like sometimes if it feels off, I'm like, I don't want to do this today. But some days it could feel really great. Yesterday was both. So I think it definitely changes. I enjoy doing a lot of other things in practice as well. It's nice to switch things up and not do too much butterfly. But yeah, I like to have variety in my training and it keeps things interesting.
Yeah, which is really important when you're training every day, day in, day out, keeping that interesting. Let's talk pre-race if we can. I know that personally when I was competing, like I had some pre-race rituals I always stuck to, even though I tried not to. I feel like sometimes they have a way of sneaking up on you, right? Like they just kind of come into your ritual. You know, I always put my right glove on first. I always took the same type of breath before I pulled off. I always shook my sled out the same way. Can you tell me a little bit about your pre-race rituals?
Yeah, so similarly, not something I really think about, and I think I started doing it, I want to say probably back when I was like 12. I guess it kind of developed from having mishaps when I got in the pool at the beginning. So our race suits are technically supposed to be really tight because it's more hydrodynamic and it makes you feel better when you're tight and kind of sucked in and you move through the water faster. But I remember my very first suit that I got, the lady at the store was like, oh, it fits perfect. Like, I think, yeah, I was definitely 12. And after all my experience, I was like, this is definitely too big. Like it was bagging at the hips, it was sagging like at the top. So I was like, okay. And I think I dove in once and it just like bubbles in the chest area when the water like enters it for the first time. So ever since that time, I've always splashed myself 15 times. I don't know where the number came from, but that's where the splash came from. And then similarly, they have these new blocks with kind of like a wedge at the back. And I've dove in before and it's moved on me. So I definitely have incorporated that into my routine and I kick it 3 times. Again, not sure where three comes from.
I I love that conversation because I feel like sometimes rituals come from funny places like that, right? It's like, and then they stick, and you're like, yep, that felt good today. That feels better. So I love you sharing with us because I think what most people don't realize is they think that athletes like pre plan these rituals, like this is going to feel good. And like that story there, you're like, yeah, it came from a weird day. And then I just kept doing it because it makes me feel more in control.
For sure.
When did becoming an Olympian become an aspiration of yours? You started swimming since you were really young, but I'd be curious to know if there was a moment or something of significance that clicked.
Well, when I started competing for the first time, it was right after the Beijing Games. So I think I was kind of just feeding off of that momentum. And in my family, we've always been huge Olympic watchers, whether that's summer or winter. Obviously, summer is a bit easier to watch because you're not in school. But even the winter, we always turned it on and we were up late. So it's something we've always done in my family. And not that I remember watching the 2008 Olympics. I think 2012 was probably the earliest one that I can actually recall. But I think going into competitive swimming, and I was very competitive, and I still am very competitive kind of in everything that I do. But I was like, oh yeah, I want to go to the Olympics. And like every kind of young athlete that starts out, whether that's swimming, track, kind of anything, you don't really know what the hard work entails in the early mornings and all the training. But that was something that I always, from the very beginning, said I wanted to do. And I think for me, it was the people that I was surrounded with, my parents, my coaches, my friends, my teachers. None of them were like, "Yeah, okay," or like was like, "Yeah, that's never gonna happen." They were always like, "Sure, like if you put your work in, like you can do whatever you want." And I think that made a really big impact on me, never being told that that was something I couldn't achieve, even though I didn't really know what I needed to do to get to that spot.
I love that. And I think that will be, it's kind of exciting to talk about that, knowing that just watching the games kind of lit that spark with you, because obviously heading into Paris this summer, there's going to be so many kids listening to this, watching the games, and knowing that that spark's going to be lit in some of them too is a really cool full circle moment. So Tokyo, which you competed in at your first Olympics, it was actually a COVID games, which most people remember and realize, meaning it completely changed the entire dynamic of the games and the experience for the athletes. What are you most looking forward to in Paris, as Paris is a more kind of quote unquote normal Olympic game dynamic?
For sure, and I think the fact that we were really overprepared for Tokyo, and I think the COC and especially Swimming Canada really kind of hammered that into us from very early on. So we kind of knew what to expect as far as the no spectators, the limitations, the constant masking and hand washing and everything like that as far as protocols go. But I think we were definitely over prepared, so it was a nice surprise to kind of be like, okay, like this is we expected it would be more strict than this. The main thing I'm looking forward to is being able to share it with my family. And that's, I think, the biggest thing is not being able to have them in Tokyo with us. But I know my whole family has kind of planned their trip and they're all coming. So that's going to be super exciting. And I think it was also a benefit to me that it was my first games because I wasn't really kind of aware of what we were missing out on. Like I've heard a couple teammates at the games, they're like, oh, I wish we could do this, or I wish we could go watch other sports or go to the closings. But I was like, this is kind of all I've known, and that was totally fine with me. But yeah, I'm definitely hoping to do more things and be able to watch other sports and definitely go to closings. That's very high on my list.
This past October, just a few months ago, at you won 5 medals and 7 total at the Pan American Games in Santiago, 2023. How does that impact you heading into the Paris Games?
Yeah, it was my first Pan Am Games, and so it was really special. I mean, the Pan Am Sports had reached out to me probably a year in advance and asked me to be a representative and ambassador for them and for Canada and for swimming, and that was a huge honor. So I actually went out for a photo shoot in January, I think, of last year, and got to see the lay of the land and kind of experience the flight time and all that kind of thing, just to kind of get a better grasp of the surroundings. And that was something I was super honored to have been asked to do, and I think that added a lot of pressure also, because not only did I want to do well for myself and for Canada, but also for Pan Am Sports because they had chosen me to do that role. But overall, I think it was a great competition. We showed that even though it wasn't our A team necessarily, we put up some really strong performances. And it was great to see some of the up and coming youngsters on our team perform super well and get on the podium and experience what it's like to be at a games environment, because that really is something so unique and so different than just going to a world championships or going to a trials meet at home. Like, there are so many differences and things that were out of your control. And I think the more you can practice that and get used to that. And I think COVID helped a lot for me, especially in that, because I always like to plan kind of my life and be like, 5 years down the line, I want to do this. And I was very kind of focused and regimented that way. But being able to only live kind of day to day during COVID, I think really helped me kind of relax a bit more and be able to live in the moment.
That's a great answer. And you're so right. Having it's totally different environment, having so many spectators there. I'm curious to know this. Actually, I just thought of this because so my sport was luge, of course, high speed going down the track. And I was a forerunner in Vancouver in the 2010 games. And then I ended up competing at the next Olympics in Sochi. And in 2010, I was not prepared for the amount of people that were next to the track, right? And I went through this one big Omega corner, and all of a sudden it was full of people and they cheered. And I thought I would be going too fast to really hear them. And of course, this huge roar of sound came. And I took a split second to look at what was happening. Of course, a split second in luge is not a good idea to take a moment. And I missed my drive and I went straight to the roof. And obviously I was a forerunner, so it was okay. But I learned my lesson. And that was such a great experience then heading into the Olympics where I knew what that was going to sound like. I knew what that was going to feel like. And it didn't distract me. When you're in the pool swimming, can you hear the arena roaring, or what does that sound or feel like when you're underwater?
Yeah, you can hear certain things, especially butterfly. Like, you bring your head up so you can hear a fair amount, and especially it gets really loud in relays. So usually when I'm not swimming is when I hear it the most. But I think the main thing for us and for our team was kind of navigating the bus schedule and that kind of thing, because I think one day to the pool it took us an hour and a half, and it was supposed to take 35 minutes. So kind of being like, okay, I need to get on a bus that's earlier, or I take the metro, kind of figuring things out like that. And always food is different in different countries and different cities. So that's something you also have to adjust to and not be too, oh, I have to have this and this and this every single day for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner to swim at my best, and be a little bit more open. But also knowing that you can bring snacks and you can bring things from home to make it feel a little bit more normal.
I'm so excited for Maggie to get to experience her first games without COVID regulations. It's so powerful to feel that energy around you. It was fantastic to hear about Maggie's life outside of sport. She's at the top of her game as an athlete, but also prioritizes other important things in her life, like school. As an athlete, it can be easy to get tunnel vision, but for Maggie, having other high-performance pursuits provides a necessary balance. I also love that she had such a great support system around her, cheering her on throughout her journey, both as an athlete and an individual. I'd love to rewind a little bit. So you were 21 in Tokyo, your first Olympics, and you won 3 medals. And you've spoken about how after the games, the pressure to stay at the top just became too much. Can you tell me more about what you were feeling and what you decided to do about it?
Yeah, so I mean, I had won at the pinnacle of sport. So I was like, I've always had something that I was chasing, like a time standard. I wanted to qualify for the Olympics, world championships, things like that. So I had accomplished pretty much everything I had to do in the sport. And the last thing on my list was to get my first world record. So I was working towards that in the fall. And then, of course, I achieved that in December of 2021. So then it became more about trying to figure out why I was still going and why I enjoyed the sport, and kind of going back to my roots in that aspect. I guess the reason that I didn't want to swim at the 2022 World Championships was because I was feeling the pressure to perform well, but I wouldn't say that was the main reason. So I think it was because with COVID and World Aquatics and how they've operated, is instead of kind of getting back on track to the normal kind of international racing schedule, they added in 2 long course world championships, a short course worlds, and in addition, we had the Commonwealth Games and the Pan Am Games. So it was just a lot of meets. So there actually wasn't supposed to be a world championships in 2022. So that was the main reason that I had said I wanted to chill summer, because that was the only competition I was supposed to have on the calendar was the Commonwealth Games. So I think that was the main reason why I didn't want to do it at Worlds. And then secondly, in March, I actually slipped on the deck and fractured my elbow. So I was out of commission for full swimming for a while and was just kicking for a few months. So then at that point, it became more about physically healing and getting back and ready for Commonwealth Games, which was my main intention.
Thanks so much for sharing with that. And I think it's important for people to realize, just the toll that coming off an Olympics has. And, it kind of sounds like you had always had these goals of, I'm going to achieve this, I'm going to achieve this. You're such a driven person. And you achieved those things. And then it was this pause of, wait a second, I have this huge busy schedule. What am I chasing right now? And kind of like trying to find that rebalance for yourself. When you took a step back from competing as an individual in 2022, you continued to compete in the relay events during this time. What do you find the differences between the relay and the individual events when it comes to the mental element?
Well, relays are an interesting dynamic because obviously you're doing it with three other people. And for me, that's the reason I went, was because I knew they needed me and they relied on me. And I was healthy enough physically at that point that I could swim and compete at the world stage, even though I didn't want to compete individually at that meet. So you have the pressure because you want to perform well for three other people. But in a way, it's also a different type of pressure because you have like Penny Alexiak, and you have obviously Kylie Moss, who's been multiple world champion, and Sid, who had been on our relays for years before that. So things like that where you can rely on the people that you have going before and after you. So it makes it a bit easier to bear that pressure. But it's just so fun being with them, and it brings a new light to the ready room, and you just have fun and you don't worry too much about the outcome. You just swim for each other, and we have a really close knit group, I think, especially after COVID, because the Toronto Center was the only pool that we could get access to for months, kind of leading into the Olympic year after it had been postponed. So we trained together and we saw all the hard work each of us put in going in to the last couple of years. So I think that brought us closer.
I love what you said there about how you kind of get to split the pressure and it's a little bit more fun to just feel each other, supporting each other, be able to like share the pressure, but it also sounds like you get to share that energy, right? And hype each other up. And all of a sudden, you're not just a single person in a room competing against other single people. You have the energy to rely on each other. You get to lift each other up. You get to cheer each other on. And it sounds like a really fun energy to be able to have that relay together.
It really is. And it really does provide a boost. Like the last day, there's always the medley relay, which is so hard because it's like we've been through a grueling 8, and I think Paris is 9-day meet. I mean, obviously we don't swim every day, but I've learned over the course of swimming in the NCAA and being a part of a college team that like the emotional ups and downs can be just as taxing as the physical swimming. So just being able to be there with each other, goofing off or having fun really does bring more energy to the team.
Have you seen the swim world's attitude towards mental health change over your career? You just talked about the emotional ups and downs, which I don't think a lot of people are talking about as much as the physical ones. Have you seen that change in your career?
I think so. And I think we've seen it in a lot of different sports and kind of reframing that everyone's on a different path. And that's something that John Atkinson at Swimming Canada has really kind of enforced the last couple of years, which is great because there's a lot of us training in the States. Some people are training in Europe. So it's about what the individual needs in order to swim at their best.
What work do you think still needs to be done in that space?
I think it's just people kind of willing to share their story and come out and talk about it. And I think that's how the stigma is going to end. But I think a lot's changed already. And I think we're heading in a good direction.
And I think it's so important and amazing that you were willing to speak up and share your story really bravely because, like you said, that's how change happens. And other athletes get to see you having that conversation and then maybe gives them the confidence to start having that conversation in their life as well. Yeah. Fascinating to me that, you were a young athlete who won Olympic medals, that you didn't actually fall into that pretty typical cycle of just pushing as hard as you can while silently struggling, right? You mentioned all of a sudden there was all these events. And I think that the typical cycle we see is when an athlete does really well at the games, even if they might be struggling, they just silently struggle and they push and they push and they push and they push to get better and better at the next games. It's really common. Was taking a break for you a conscious choice that you made, or did you have anyone that kind of helped guide you through that season?
That was a choice that I made. I mean, I think it all came down to the situation that I was kind of stuck in at that point. My coach, who had coached me to my first NCAA title, my first world championship, Olympic gold, he had actually left the program that I was at in Michigan and came down here to LSU, which is why I came down and followed him. So I was stuck in Michigan because I didn't really want to transfer all my classes, and I was 1 year from graduating. So I was like, I'll just suck it up and continue the year and finish the 4 years like I had originally signed on to do. But the coach that was there at the time, he wasn't really listening to the needs that I had as far as my training was going. So I had a completely different training kind of regime, and it really wasn't working for me. And I had many conversations with him about that, because leading up, my previous coach had always been about communicating and advocating for yourself. And so I did that, and he still kind of chose not to listen. So I think it was the hardest part for me, was that I knew what I needed to be doing, but I wasn't getting that there. So by graduating in April of that year, I was able to decide that I wanted to go somewhere else for my grad school. And I decided to follow my coach down to LSU. So between World Championships and Commonwealth Games, actually, I came down here with my dad, and we stayed for 2 weeks to get the lay of the land and train with him, more importantly, and kind of get my confidence back in my training, which I think definitely showed at Commonwealth Games. So I think that was kind of more about getting back into a situation where I could trust what I was doing was going to get me to where I wanted to go in Paris.
And speaking about different coaches and different kind of mentalities, I think it's important to have this conversation. What do you think are some of the most important steps that athletes and their coaches or teams or federations can take to safeguard mental health?
I think every kind of coach is different. And for me, it's been about my coach and I, it's more of a partnership. It's not so much of a one unilateral kind of power dynamic where he tells me what to do and I kind of just, yes, okay, obey. But it's definitely more of a conversation, like depending on how I'm feeling that day or goals we're kind of looking towards. It's very much he'll bring me an idea to the table and I'll be like, okay, like yes, or I'm not feeling like that today. Like, can we do that a different day? Kind of thing.
It sounds like you're really good at listening to your own body and knowing yourself well enough that you can speak up on what you think you need on a certain day in a certain season of life. Are there any lessons that you learned either at the last Olympics or in the 4 years since that you're bringing with you into these next games?
So many things. And I think I was told in Tokyo, like I had heard my friends talk about it. Like they're like, oh yeah, like I wish I kind of had taken in the atmosphere a bit and had a bit more fun during the Olympics and not been so focused and so serious. And I think I did a good job of that in Tokyo. And I think my 100 fly was the least nervous I've ever been, and trying to get back to that headspace. And I think it obviously helped with COVID because I didn't have any firm goals as far as placing or time. Obviously, we were just extremely lucky and grateful to have had the last Olympics. But obviously, it's quite different going into Paris because we've had kind of normal training. And I was looking back in my videos today, and 100 days out from Tokyo, I was doing pull-ups on my childhood playset because I was in quarantine having come back from the States. So we're in a really different place than we were last time. And it's always a good thing to kind of see where we are. But I'm trying not to kind of think too much about how it was leading into Tokyo because I know there are so many differences.
I love that story, by the way, of you just doing pull-ups on your like childhood playset. That's a moment of like, I bet I'm assuming you probably had a moment of thinking back to your childhood and then zooming forward to be like, I'm now doing pull-ups to train for the Olympics that are in a pandemic and I'm in my childhood bedroom. And that must have been a totally surreal moment.
Yeah, and like I started when we opened the pool in I think March 25th of 2020. So I was swimming outside in the snow in the pool that got me into swimming. So it was really a full circle moment and that was kind of incredible, but I'm really glad that we're not in that situation again right now leading into Paris.
Yeah, you're like, it was a good memory and all, but I'm not interested in swimming in the snow this year.
Yeah.
You've been vocal as well about sharing your story as an Olympic athlete with asthma. Why is sharing that story important to you?
So originally, when you grow up as a swimmer, you swim everything from the 50 free to the mile and fly, back, breast, IM, kind of everything in between. And you don't really specialize until you get to like college age where you can kind of see what strokes you gravitate to and the distances. So growing up, I would always swim everything. And I would say arguably 200 fly was my best event. And when I finally was diagnosed with asthma in 2017, I physically could barely finish 200 fly. So it was my asthma that actually forced me to focus on the shorter distances, which is what I've had the most success in since I've gotten on the senior national team. So it's kind of ironic that I guess I have asthma to thank for that. But I definitely want to, through my partner with the Lung Health Foundation, just show other young athletes that are starting their asthma journey or have a lung disease of different kind that they can still achieve something athletically if that's their goal to. They may have to modify things and it'll be a harder path than those that don't have it, but I think it makes their story special and they're able to accomplish whatever they put their mind to.
What I'm hearing from that is kind of just a message if you wanting to share with younger athletes overall to not let limitations stop you from pursuing a big dream that you might have.
No, exactly. And I think also I want to just help to promote lung health and overall health in all Canadians because obviously with COVID having affected people's lungs and the way with global warming and climate change, it doesn't hurt to be a little bit more proactive and cautious for sure when it comes to your health.
So not only are you a fantastic being an understatement swimmer, but you're also just finishing up your master's degree. Academics is obviously very important to you. How have you balanced school and elite sport throughout university?
It's so challenging. And I think student athletes, we have a unique set of skills that are ingrained in us from a very early age. And just thinking back on it today, I've been a student athlete since I was 8. So that's 16 years of my life kind of honing these skills. And I mean, obviously, I think I still have a lot to learn, especially I procrastinate a little bit. I'm not super bad at it, but occasionally I just put off an assignment. And so just trying to be more cautious about how I'm spending my time. But I think it takes a lot of work. And obviously, there's a lot everyone needs to learn. But I was always very good as a kid at bringing my homework in the car, bringing it to swim meets. Sometimes, if it was when you're a little kid and there's like endless heats of 400 free and it takes 3 hours, like I'd bring my homework and sit on the deck and do it. So it's always about finding that time. But I think that's always something I've had a lot of pride in. And in my family, my parents are extremely academic. So in order for me to be able to swim the way I wanted to, school always came first. And that's the only time my parents ever kind of put their foot down and got involved as far as swimming was concerned because they're more musically inclined, I guess, because they met in choir. And my dad's a high school drama teacher and music teacher. So they're more on that side of things. But when it came down to school, they're like, if you don't do this or if you're not getting good grades, like you can't go to practice. But otherwise, I was kind of free for them to take my lead.
Why do you feel that it's so important for athletes to have these different facets of their identity beyond sport?
I think it's super important. I mean, sport isn't going to be forever. And I think I've always had a good idea and good sense of that. But I also like just being a well-rounded person that has different interests. I love going to theater with my family, or I like going rock climbing with my friends from high school, certain things like that. And I always like to have something else on my mind, whether that's school or just being at home, being with friends and family. So I think being too focused on one thing, for me at least, I'll get too analytical and kind of overthink things. So I like to kind of have that balance.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I feel like it was always important it almost allows you to perform better in your sport if you have these other things going on because especially for a lot of the A type athletes that have a tendency to overthink things and overanalyze things. Sometimes we need other hobbies in school to keep our mind busy so we actually can perform better.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've always been really good with numbers and with swimming stats. So I think I would obsess way too much over that if I didn't have anything else going on.
Totally. So you've spoken about this before in your relay team, right? But you've been a part of this cohort of Canadian women swimmers that you've really elevated the sport to a new level. What legacy do you hope to leave for the next generation of young girls?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about. I mean, I think the resurgence of Canadian swimming kind of started back in probably the 2015 Pan Ams when we held the home games. And I think we had a really strong showing there. And that kind of just snowballed. And I think that's all it's been doing ever since 2016 and 2017. And kind of hopefully will go into the future. And we're really lucky that there's such a strong group of us. And we're all very similar ages. So I think we get along well in that aspect as well. But I think the legacy that I want to leave in swimming is not just who I was as a swimmer, but who I was as a figure on the national team. I want to be a role model for younger athletes that are up and coming. I want to show them that you can have an unconventional path, but still be able to achieve at the highest level. I mean, I was on the junior team since 2015, but I actually missed the junior team in 2017. So I kind of took that summer off to relax and kind of rejuvenate myself, and then had 1 year left of high school before making a huge change and going to college in the States, which turned out to be one of the best decisions of my life. But just showing that everyone can have a different path, and obviously show the kind of teammate that I was and that I continue to be, and be super supportive and loyal and just enjoy being around my teammates.
It reminds me of the quote, and I'm not going to get it right, but it's something along the lines of like, people won't remember what you did or what you said, but they'll remember who you were and how you acted, right? So you just saying, want to be that teammate. I want to show up. And I can say, even hearing your story, I think it's so important and brave that you're sharing it, because just you saying, I'm going to take an unconventional path, right? It takes bravery to take an unconventional path. It takes bravery to say, when everybody's telling you, you have to go A, B, C, and D to reach your goals, and you saying, I'm actually going to take a summer off because I feel like that's the best choice for me, is so important for other athletes. I think you're just giving athletes permission to listen to themselves and their own gut instinct and their own insights on what they need to be their most successful selves. You are one of the athletes that was featured in Team Canada's Brave is Unbeatable campaign heading into the Paris Olympics. What was it about that opportunity that made you say yes? And what was your experience on set like?
It was so fun. So I had a bunch of production days kind of back to back to back that week. I came back to Toronto for it because my team was actually competing at the conference championship. So it was my first kind of real shoot experience. And I think with COVID following the Olympics, we didn't get to do a lot of that. We didn't do a lot of in-studio anything, whether that was shooting or media or anything like that. So it was definitely fun, and swimming while some guy's running a Segway beside you was kind of a cool experience. And I'd never actually been to that facility in Markham before, so that was cool to experience a new pool.
Well, I'm excited for Canadians to watch the campaign. And just like you said, it's always cool to hear the athlete's perspective of behind the scenes of how those shots were captured.
Oh, for sure. You don't realize how much time and resetting and kind of just waiting around that it takes. I don't think I could be an actor or anything like that, but it is interesting to kind of get an insight to what goes on behind the camera that you don't see normally.
Yeah. Well, I personally have to say, I think that your journey as a swimmer of constantly listening to your body and listening to your own mind and trusting yourself on that and speaking up for what you needed, even when that's a hard conversation to have, and then ending up coming back better than ever and kind of, having that confidence to say, yes, I did bravely speak up for what I needed, even when it wasn't easy, is such bravery to me. And I just want you to know that you are bravely paving the path for other athletes. But I'd love to know, what does being brave mean to you personally?
That's a hard question. I mean, there's nothing I really think about that's being like, oh, like, I think this is really brave of me for trying this. I think the first thing that comes to mind is that obviously I went to Michigan for 4 years, and that was only kind of 2 hours away from where I grew up in London. But kind of coming down here to LSU, I'm older, but I've never kind of lived this far away from home before. So kind of growing up and finally, I mean, it takes me 12 hours door to door now, which is not something I'm used to. But just being able to kind of experience new things, new cultures down here has been incredible. And I think that's something I would say that was brave.
Thanks so much for sharing all of your stories, Maggie. I think that it's really important for everybody listening. And yeah, I'm just so impressed with you on kind of trusting yourself and constantly speaking up for yourself. Something I really loved about this conversation was hearing about Maggie's relationship with her coach. Having that level of trust and transparency with your coach has the power to level up an athlete to even greater heights. Maggie knows what does and doesn't work for her and advocates for herself and her training. It's all part of the mental game. I want to wrap up this episode with Maggie's favorite quote. The comfort zone is a great place, but nothing ever grows there. I really look forward to watching Maggie push past her own comfort zones this summer in Paris. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review. It's the biggest way you can support the podcast. To follow these athletes' stories and results as they compete in Paris and beyond, download the Team Canada Olympic app, visit olympic.ca, or follow Team Canada on social. To watch clips from all episodes of Momentum, subscribe to Team Canada's YouTube channel. See you next time.